So I will proceed to invite the members of the committee. Honorable Najima, you sit. The members of the committee to introduce themselves, and then thereafter we will have our stakeholders introduce themselves. We receive the bill, and then we receive a memorandum from the executive director of IPOD, and we call it a day, and we rush to plenary next week. Patrick, take a seat. Introductions from members.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Medad Segona Rubega.
Mitiana South. Humble people of Mitiana South.
Up to Katuntu Bugwe.
And Stephen Baka Mugabi, Bukoli County North, chairperson of the committee. I now invite you, a move of the bill, to introduce yourself and your team.
Honorable Chair and the honorable members of this committee, Yusuf Mutembuli is my name. I do represent the people of Bunyole East in Butareja district, and I'm standing in for Honorable Nakut, who is the mover of the bill. And I'm a seconder. My colleague can also introduce himself.
My name is Afidra Ronald. I represent the people of Lower Madi from Madi Okolo district from West Nile. I am a seconder to the bill.
And then the executive director of IPOD has come as a stakeholder. So let us first listen to the mover. This is a small bill, the Political Parties and Organizations Amendment Bill 2025. It's a bill of 2 clauses. Clerk, where is the clerk? Make sure the members have the bills. They could have left their bills in their offices. Make sure the members have the bills. I will invite you, the mover, to take us through your bill. Explain to us what your bill intends to achieve within the next 10 minutes, because it is a 2 clauses bill.
Okay, thank you. So this committee, Chair, I'm appearing here today on behalf of Honorable Nakut Faith, the move of the Political Parties and Organizations Amendment Bill 2025. Chair and members, as you recall, Honorable Nakut moved the motion, and I and Honorable Afidra Olema Ronald seconded the motion, and which was granted to present the bill, which was done. Background, Chair, on 14th May 2025, a bill entitled the Political Parties and Organizations Amendment Bill 2025 was read for the first time, and in accordance with Rules 134 and 200, referred to the Committee of Legal and Parliamentary Affairs for scrutiny, and that is why we are here. Honorable Chair, the object of the bill is to amend the Political Parties and Organizations Act Cap 178 to 1. Restrict government funding and other public resources provided to political parties and political organizations that are represented in Parliament to only political parties and organizations that are members of the National Consultative Forum. 2. Provide for the Inter-Party Organization for Dialogue and the Forum for Non-Represented Political Parties and Political Organizations as organs of the National Consultative Forum. So we are creating 2 organs under NCF. To provide for functions of the Inter-Party Organization for Dialogue and for related matters. Honorable Chair, the mischief that is intended to be cured. 1. Honorable members, Uganda returned to a multi-party political system in 2005. The country had been operating under a no-party political system that we all know as movement system since 1986. In 2005, Uganda's parliament passed a constitutional amendment allowing for multi-party politics once again. In order to regulate the formation, operation, and membership of political parties and organizations in Uganda, Parliament enacted the Political Parties and Organizations Act Cap 178. Honorable Chair, The Political Parties and the Organizations Act contains, among others, provisions that foster one, tolerance, dialogue, and peaceful coexistence between and among different political parties, organizations, their members, and supporters. These include Section 20, which establishes a national consultative forum for political parties and organizations, 15 and 17, which allow for political parties to merge and create alliances. Honorable Chair, the Political Parties and Organizations Act further sets out a code of conduct for political parties and organizations, which in paragraph 3F of Schedule 4 obligates political parties and organizations to establish and maintain effective lines of communication with the Electoral Commission, National Consultative Forum, and the other adjacent political parties and organizations. Honorable Chair and members, political parties and organizations represented in Parliament have supplemented measures prescribed in the Political Parties and Organizations Act for maintaining communication, dialogue, and cooperation between political parties and organizations by creating inter-party organization for dialogue. An organization aimed at promoting inter-party dialogue and cooperation as a means of dealing with political differences and managing conflict between political parties. Honorable Chair, the Inter-Party Organization for Dialogue has been instrumental in financing the activities of political parties in Uganda and conducting capacity building and training in human rights, good governance, and democracy. This has supplemented the funds provided to political parties by government under Section 14 of the Political Parties and Organizations Act, which currently stands at 35 billion. That's what the government has been contributing to the parties, 35 billion now. Pardon? Per annum, that is what is provided. In spite of the specific provisions of the Political Parties and Organizations Act, some political parties have refused or failed to participate in measures and activities aimed at encouraging one, tolerance, dialogue, and peaceful coexistence between and among different political parties and organizations and their members, thereby affronting specific provisions of sections 15, 17, and the Code of Conduct of political parties enshrined in the Political Parties and Organizations Act. Honorable Chair, currently the Political Parties and Organizations Act does not adequately deal with the conduct of political parties and organizations that do not adhere to the principles of tolerance, dialogue, and peaceful coexistence among its political parties as required in the Act, thereby allowing the continuation of such conduct with devastating consequences to Uganda's democratic trajectory. The mischief the bill intends to cure are: one, colleagues, we intend to have IPOD institutionalized. IPOD has played a crucial role in building tolerance, dialogue, and peaceful coexistence amongst political parties and political organizations, yet is not institutionalized. The Inter-Party Organization for Dialogue, I'll be referring to it as IPOD, Uganda, is a legal entity incorporated in 2021 with an aim of pursuing and promoting inclusive democracy and the fundamental principles of democracy, good governance, human rights, institutional strengthening of political parties to be trusted representatives of public interests, non-discrimination, promoting inter-party dialogue and cooperation as a means for dealing with political differences, as well as managing conflict without resorting to undemocratic means. IPOD was formed in 2009 as a loose coalition of political parties with representation in Parliament with support from Netherlands Institute for Multi-Party Democracy at the request of the government of Uganda in a bid to support its multi-party democracy following a return to multipartyism in 2005. Honorable Chair and members, at the time of its foundation, there were 5 political parties in Uganda, that is Conservative Party, Democratic Party, Forum for Democratic Change, National Resistance Movement, and Uganda People's Congress. Later, the membership changed with the electoral cycle. Institutionalization of the inter-party IPOD as a statutory body represents a critical step in the evolution of Uganda's democratic governance and political maturity. At institutional level, IPOD will be moving into a direction that is fundamental to its work. Below are the key justifications for why the government of Uganda should support this transition. Now, Chair, since its inception, IPOD has provided a unique platform where political parties across ideological and partisan divides can engage in structured, principled, and evidence-informed dialogue. In a context where political competition often breeds mistrust, polarization, and conflict, IPOD has consistently demonstrated the value of dialogue in building consensus, reducing political tensions, and advancing reforms. Institutionalizing IPOD will ensure that dialogue becomes a recognized and permanent feature of Uganda's governance architecture, rather than a discretionary or ad hoc mechanism. This will embed political dialogue into the formal policy making and conflict prevention frameworks of the state. And our Chair, Uganda's political history is characterized by cycles of conflict, contested transitions, and post-election tensions. IPOD has played a stabilizing role during these periods by facilitating inter-party communication, managing disputes, and encouraging tolerance. Formalizing IPOD status through an act of parliament will, 1, provide a permanent institutional home for political dialogue. 2, reduce the reliance on informal or external mediators. 3, strengthen early warning and conflict prevention mechanisms in the political sector. And lastly, enhance political party accountability for non-violent and issue-based competition. On our Chair, the bill includes 2 proposals to institutionalize IPOD as an organ of the Consultative Forum. The National Consultative Forum currently is created under Section 20 of the Principal Act. The National Consultative Forum shall have 2 organs. We are creating 2 organs under NCF. The first one is the organ for political parties and political organizations with representation in Parliament, which shall be known as the Inter-Party Organization for Dialogue. Those that are represented in Parliament, on our Chair, will be called they will be under the organ of IPOD. Then for those not represented in Parliament, shall have an organ for non-represented political parties and political organizations. This is because they have different unique challenges and interests. This will ensure that political parties represented in Parliament have their own organ within the National Consultative Forum, where they will discuss their unique issues pertaining to them. Likewise, there will also be a forum for non-represented political parties and political organizations in which the non-represented parties also have their own organ to discuss issues pertaining to them. The current Council of National Consultative Forum will remain for purposes of enforcing the code and dealing with matters arising from the 2 organs. On our Chair, conditioning of funding of political parties. On our Chair, Section 14 of the Political Parties and Organizations Act mandates the government to provide funding and other public resources to political parties and political organizations represented in Parliament. This funding is restricted to political parties and organizations represented in Parliament and are restricted to 1, registered political parties or organizations shall be funded by government under this Act in respect of elections and their normal day-to-day activities. In respect of election, government shall finance political parties and organizations on equal basis. 3, in respect of normal day-to-day activities, funding shall be based on numerical strength of each political party or organization in Parliament. On our Chair, however, this provision does not condition the funding on political parties and political organizations' commitment to the principles of 1, tolerance, dialogue, and peaceful coexistence. To promote transparency, accountability, and equitable access to public funding among political actors, adherence to these democratic principles should be a prerequisite for accessing government funding. This will ensure that funds are used responsibly and effectively and accessed by political parties that have agreed to align with democratic values. On our Chair, apart from the requirement to account, political parties have no other obligations imposed by law for receipt of funds provided to them by government. The current provisions under the Code of Conduct for a party that fails to adhere to the provision of the political parties and are weak and not deterrent enough, thereby allowing the continuation of such conduct with devastating consequences to Uganda's democratic trajectory. Conditioning receipt of funds provided by government under Section 14 will make political parties adhere to the requirements of the Political Parties and Organizations Act, induce behavior change, and achieve more cohesion. Funding political parties should be conditional on their adherence to principles of tolerance, dialogue, and peaceful coexistence for several important reasons, including, Chair, promoting stability and peace. When political parties commit to these principles, it reduces the likelihood of conflicts, violence, or divisive politics, fostering a more stable and peaceful society. 2, encouraging responsible politics. Conditional funding incentives parties to engage in constructive dialogue and respect diverse views, leading to more responsible and democratic behavior. Upholding democratic values. Tolerance and peaceful coexistence are fundamental to a healthy democracy. Therefore, ensuring parties adhere to these principles helps protect democratic processes and human rights. Preventing extremism and extremism, like for one party in Uganda, you know. Conditions discourage parties from promoting intolerance. It's okay. Conditions discourage parties from promoting intolerance, hate speech, or violent rhetoric, which can undermine social cohesion. Lastly, accountability and good governance. Linking funds to these principles encourages parties to act ethically and responsibly, fostering a political future based on respect and inclusivity. Overall, conditional funding helps create a political environment conducive to democracy, stability, and social harmony. Honorable Chair, having gone through this, allow me say that we intend to have an amendment to Section 21 of the Principal Act, and we are moving under Rule 135 of our rules that allows us as the movers, which allows the mover to amend the bill. What we are trying to amend is that...
How does that impact on your certificate?
It does not have any effect. 135. Yes, any impact, because there is nothing new that we are creating that will have any. The amendment we are having.
Before you go far,
yes.
Who determines the financial implication of a bill? Is it you, the mover?
Logically, even me as a mover, I can know that this one has a.
It is not about
I mean, you can. My question is, under the law, the one who determines is the Minister of Finance. Is the Minister of Finance. And now, for us, our duty is to cause an amendment, and if the committee finds that it offends, then you may not consider it. But we have a duty.
You can only propose.
Yes, I'm saying we are, by proposing we are causing. I will not say that I'm making an amendment. We are saying we are causing. In its simple terms, we are proposing an amendment, and it's under Section 21. Section 21, Chair, whereas the National Consultative Forum applies for all parties, whether in Parliament or not, okay? Section 21 restricts the leadership of the National Consultative Forum to only parties in Parliament. And that's why we are saying that this does not give the intention of the National Consultative Forum.
What is the purpose behind that provision?
The National Consultative Forum?
Yes, the leadership, restricting it to those that are represented in Parliament.
That's what I'm going to explain. We are saying that the National Consultative Forum is for all parties, whether in the Parliament or not. But when it comes to leadership, we now discriminate those that are not represented in Parliament. And we are saying if the National Consultative Forum is to apply to all parties, even the leadership must be given to those that are not represented in Parliament. That is our proposal, and that is our view. So that it should not be seen as if it is only for the parties in Parliament. And that is why we are saying that That is why we are saying that we need to create room for at least the vice chairman to be someone from a party that is not represented in the parliament, so that it is a representative forum. Shouldn't be appear as if it is a forum for all the parties that are in the parliament.
So let me
If we do understand the National Consultative Forum, what is the composition, then it will be very easy for us to understand that there is need for creation of leadership to give also room to those that are not in the parliament.
Where if we do means who? If
But-
we do understand,
Yes.
refers to who? We as a committee or you as the movers?
Me as a mover, if I understand. Yes.
I wanted to pick your mind on that particular amendment.
Chair, would I seek your indulgence that I make the amendment and then those questions can be put to me later. Yes. So, Chair, we are saying that we are proposing that we amend section 21, 1 and 2, so that 1, the chairperson will remain, the chairperson should be by a majority party in the parliament. And then we are saying that for the second one, the vice president, we had proposed to have 2 vice presidents. It is our proposal that 1 should come from a majority opposition in the parliament, and then the second one should come from those parties that are not represented. Those are our proposals, and we humbly move. Chair, I think that is what we managed to present this morning. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, and the spirit of mischief to be cured is that there are those parties that... What is the purpose of government funding these political parties? So much so that now you want to exclude those that do not, quote unquote, cooperate. In other words, do you want to use the statute to force cooperation, that people must cooperate by force? That if I choose I don't want to cooperate with you, I have not offended any other law because I don't believe in what you are doing. You deny me the right to be funded like other parties. In other words, you condition it. So you want to use your numerics to force cooperation. And that is what you call the code of conduct. 2, you said currently the code of conduct is not being observed. Is the problem with the existing law or non-enforcement, but by whoever is supposed to enforce the code of conduct? So in other words, the alliance must be coerced. The second, Mr. Chairman, the next question I want to ask about the leadership. Now, you have statutorily provided for the majority party, is that democracy? Then the majority opposition party. From that one, you jump those that are in opposition but not majority. You go to those that are not represented. I thought the purpose of restricting was to discourage parties that, you know, briefcase parties, because we've had some in the country. Someone establishes a political party, whether it is still functioning, whether it has branches, whether it has membership or not. For you, you just bring it in the consultative forum and you give it leadership. Of course, I hesitate to say that some of them are actually a creature of one other big party. And so you give them the vice presidency for whatever reason. And if you make this statutory, supposing at some point the majority party, which is currently the NRM, does not want to cooperate, but you have made the leadership statutory. And 2, Supposing the other day, the second party in the opposition is not cooperating and therefore not party, who is going to be who to take up the leadership or that position where you have made the leadership statutory? You did mention that there are some parties which are not cooperating. I was itching to wait and waiting to hear you tell us which ones are those parties.
NUP.
Those that have precipitated your mind.
Yes, NUP.
And in what form they are not cooperating, so that we could understand. Finally, and then whether you define cooperation in your proposed bill. What do you do when a party or a member is not conforming to the code, especially where non-cooperation is not codified or is not a requirement of your code? Finally, who is your sponsor?
Mover for making this presentation. Chair, my first observation is I'm really disappointed, extremely disappointed by the retarding thinking and moves by Ugandans we expect to be at a different level. The wave of proposals, the wave of suggestions being made that retards our democracy, coming from supposedly elite class of people in this country. I'm really disappointed and I can say very disgusted that the strides we have made in democracy, the people who are behind pulling the country back to that situation described in the preamble of the Constitution, are the elite class who should be providing even more good solutions. This proposal, this bill, is one such very negative proposal brought for legislation. And in the end, I will be making prayers that...
You'll need to illustrate how...
Yes, I'm now coming to that.
A proposal to foster unity...
I am coming to that.
Cooperation, how can that be progressive?
I am coming to that.
To foster dialogue?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm coming to that, Chair. And Chair, I would like to start with bullet 3 on page 3. Section 20 has been cited, and Section 20 and 15 and 17 says the Act allows for political parties to merge and create alliances. Alliances and mergers are voluntary in nature. It cannot be legislated upon. That is the spirit. It is here cited in the background. Alliances, political parties are voluntary. So you cannot legislate to force political parties to merge and be into an alliance. And to add on to that, the right to associate or disassociate is enshrined. It's a constitutional right. And it says any person. It means it applies to both humans but also legal persons. So for you to come and say people must be forced into a round table to dialogue, people must be forced into a round table to associate, you are offending the Constitution right away, because that is a right that is inherent. I have a choice to do that. So I find the suggestion that that is the basis, that there is intolerance, that there is a, the other word is, those words that are not even defined, they are not even clearly defined. What may be intolerance to you may not be intolerance to me. I'll give you a simple example. Recently, a live example. I saw our Deputy Speaker of Parliament in a function somewhere, courteously exchanging pleasantries with the Honorable Robert Chagulanyi. And from the reactions from the public, some people interpreted it differently. They were intolerant to that gesture. For them, it was something else. It shouldn't happen that somebody in NRM high office should be seen with a member of opposition. And some people thought the gesture was good. So I am just submitting that the word intolerance is subjective. You cannot legislate over it because it goes into the roots of the feelings of a person. So you cannot put a law and say, I am forcing you to tolerate so and so. Some people even sneezing in public, they cannot stand it, and so many other things. So how do you define that? I could have used other words as well. On page 6, which is going to touch on the organs, you want to create 2 organs. Do you know the financial implication of creating an organ into an institution? If you are going to propose to create 2 organs, there is a definite financial implication. And it is my submission further that there was a deliberate choice to allow the leadership be held by parties already in parliament, because those parties are already funded. They can finance the chairship, they can finance, there is a budget already allocated for that. So creation of an extra will have a financial implication. We shall examine that against the certificate. When a political party registers, one of the justifications is that there are no, that parties have failed to adhere to the conduct. Do you know that the EC, the Electoral Commission, can give a political party the highest punishment, which is deregistration? It is already in the law. The Electoral Commission, should there be a breach, if there was a breach by any political party, they are empowered under this act to deregister a political party. That, like to exterminate it. That is like a death sentence to a political, to kill it. It is authorized by law. So what other sanctions are you talking about? Are you saying the EC is not doing its work? Because if you read through, they are the ones who implement this law and they have all the powers. I would appreciate you are speaking to parliamentarians and you are one. You cannot say some political parties. List to us the political parties that exist in Uganda and point out, you mentioned to us which one. And I must now submit, because at some point, I know what happens in my political party. There is no political party represented in parliament that does not participate in National Consultative Forum. And you are here, you want to amend the National Consultative Forum, the same act. There is no political party. I stand to be corrected. But at least I have attended some. The 7 that are represented in parliament, all of them sit and participate in the National Consultative Forum. Why then should what I call an NGO, called IPOD, an NGO started by the Dutch, and there is a background towards that. They were trying to achieve something. If you follow the history, when there was disagreements in the country, people are looking for external mediators to solve the question of the elections, general elections. That is the background to this institute. So why are we now importing some private entity and we want to bring it and formalize it as supposing an organ or something of the state? I want that to be explained to me. Now you point out that that IPOD is registered, is incorporated. It has a legal standing now. An enactment in parliament also would create, you are basically creating another organization. So how do we address the legal lacuna? Are we going to first wind up? Are we going to ask IPOD to wind up? Follow up the processes of winding up with the URSB, and then later come here? How do we deal with that? Because they're already an existing entity somewhere, and then you are here trying also to create it. In their memorandum of and articles of association, which we don't have here, of IPOD, we don't have here. Does it even allow for it to be, I don't know whether it's co-opted or to be, do we have that? You talk of the political parties in IPOD. Is there evidence that you have consulted them? Yesterday, the president of Uganda People's Congress was extremely furious about this. So can the move assure us you cannot come and present on behalf of the 6 or the 7 who sit without evidence that actually they participated in this, something which is going to affect them? Who is the principal body going to be offended by this law? The political parties, the ones represented in parliament. Is there evidence that you consulted NUP, UPC, GEMA, PPP, NRM, and FDC, so that this proposal is well received? Is there evidence that you consulted the rest of the political parties? Lastly, if you condition funding to this dialogue in quotes, are you seeking to compromise political parties? And I will merge it with the submission of Honorable Segona. Every political party in their registration instrument, their constitution, they will list some principles. Some will say integrity, and they will leave tolerance out. They have left dialogue out because they do not believe, and that is what sets them apart from the other party. So when an electorate, a voter is going to elect, we elect on the basis knowing that this party is tolerant to this situation. And I know at some point some parties may come in Uganda and say we don't tolerate this situation. So how do you force a party which has a registered constitution and the constitution has listed its principles? How do you force that principle? You impose it on a party. It is not part of their constitution. So how do you impose that on them and you want them to work? So I think this is meant to weaken political parties and try to bring the political parties under, I don't know what kind of arrangement. And even the timing itself is quite suspect. Now, when you say a party has committed hate speech is a criminal offense. Have you prosecuted? And you cite here that some are promoting intolerance and hate speech. Go and prosecute them. Their agency is responsible for this. These are criminal offenses in the books of our law. So go and prosecute them. Do not seek to maneuver and go around. The Constitution is very clear. So my submission is, where criminal sanctions can work, let criminal law be applicable. Where the Electoral Commission has powers, let them use that power. There is an elaborate process of how Electoral Commission can bring a party into conformity. And I think we have seen the Electoral Commission issue some letters. We have demoted this party. We have required them to do this. So I am not really convinced. And if this is a bill that was conceived in a corridor somewhere and you are trying to get it born here, you better get a proper bedroom to produce a good bill. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, my colleagues, Honorable Segona. But I'm wondering whether the bill or what is produced here does not contravene Article 29, Part E, which says freedom of association, which shall include the freedom to form and join associations or unions, including trade unions and political and other civic organizations. I am wondering, because what I'm seeing here is the bill is intending actually to force political parties to cooperate by force, by way of an act, which my colleagues here want to be enacted. The other one is cooperation. That word is a big word in the meaning of it, cooperation. The movers of the bill want which party to cooperate with which one. Because if you are saying some are not cooperating with which one? Because no party has come out to complain that they are not cooperating with the other. I don't know whether it is cooperating with the NRM or NRM cooperating with the other.
And cooperating in what sense?
And actually, in what sense, I don't know. So I think the movers should be in a position to actually explain what cooperation do they mean. The other one is the IPOD in its own sense. I remember the IPOD was a formation, like Honorable Odura said, by the Dutch. They came here and did a lot of things, and they wanted to actually bring out something which I think refused. Isn't the foreigners using the amendment actually to achieve their own goal, which is probably hidden under the amendment, which is here before us? Lastly, Mr. Chairman, is the people who are not represented in the parties which are not represented in Parliament. Sometimes the briefcase parties my colleague has talked about, sometimes they are advantageous to some people. You never know when you will need that briefcase party. So sometimes you need them somehow. So as they are there, don't throw them very far. One day you might need to pick to pick on a briefcase party. But as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Chairman, the parties which are not represented in Parliament, they have gotten a forum. So you cannot come here and you say that those people who are not represented in Parliament again will have a same forum with the parties which are represented in Parliament. So I want my colleagues yeah, you are saying, I think, if I understood you properly, that the parties which are not represented in Parliament should have a vice chairman of the Consultative Council. I am saying they are comfortable and they have not complained wherever they are. They are there very comfortable. Why are you feeling the pain which is not there? Because they have not complained. I don't know whether they have written to you to say they are suffering somewhere. They need actually the act to come and help them. They are comfortable. Chiwanda, whoever is there, is very fine there. And Chiwanda is also fine wherever he is as the chairman of parties represented in Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I entirely agree with the submissions of my questions from the mover. At least we believe that at a certain point there was some cooperation. And according to you, at a certain point, cooperation is not there. Can you kindly highlight to us what was achieved during the time when you feel that there was cooperation, and what has failed to be achieved to the point that you have been forced to move this bill? What has failed to be achieved as a result of failure to cooperate together? And secondly, kindly brief us about some issues which were agreed upon at the point of cooperation, but they were frustrated entirely by the ruling party, which is part of that organization. But they were frustrated and they were never implemented. What was the cause of that, and how do you intend to address that?
Lastly, Chair,
Lastly, yes.
the way I see their bill, it's like they want to suffocate.
They want to create order.
It's not creating an order. It's not creating an order, because you cannot force me to cooperate with you and I don't want. It's like you want to suffocate parties. We are in a democratic system, a democratic party, government. To me, this bill is not making any sense. Thank you, Right Honourable Chair.
Osanta.
Honourable Chair, I was a member of IPOD. And my first issue is, as we met, there were issues which were not resolved by IPOD. And now, yesterday, Chair, I don't know whether you were in Parliament, you saw my party president talking very furiously about some of these issues which were not resolved in IPOD, even with members who are very active on the IPOD platform. So are you trying to say that this bill is coming to solve the problems which were never solved with the members who are active on the IPOD? Then number two, Chair, when I read on the objective of the bill, A, that would restrict government funding and other public resources provided to political parties and political organizations that are represented in Parliament only to political parties and organizations that are members of the National Consultative Forum. Chair, first of all, government funding or government funds is a public resource. That is issue number one. That must be benefited by all. That is how I look at it. Then two, in politics and in many issues, even as members of Parliament, there is always freedom of entry and exit. So why are you trying to tag what is supposed to be very good to only a few using this very bill? Because, Chair, I think in politics you need to convince and you get more numbers than locking some people out. Then, I want to also ask, Doctor, you are the head of IPOD. We sat with you, and we met so many times as council at that level, trying to convince government and IPOD that during the election year, the money should be shared equally to all the political parties, because we all have the same challenges as far as political parties are concerned. What is your view about that, about sharing of this money during the election year equally? Thank you, Chair.
Honorable 95 Constitution did some fundamental groundwork, and they set for us irreducible minimum positions to guide our governance, our democratic governance and our democratic processes. In respect of political parties, the framers of the 1995 Constitution reduced their expectations of political parties into Article 71 of the Constitution. And the requirements I read from this, Article 71, 1A, if every political party shall be national in character, the membership shall not be based on sex, ethnicity, religion, or other sectional divisions. The internal organization of political parties shall conform to democratic principles enshrined in the Constitution. Members of the national organs of the political party shall be regularly elected from citizens of Uganda in conformity with the provisions of paragraphs A to B of this article. I will skip C because I will get back to it. D, no person shall be compelled to join the political party by virtue of belonging to an organization or interest group. Parliament shall by law prescribe a code of conduct for political organizations and political parties. C provides as follows: political parties shall be required by law to account for the sources and use of their funds and assets. Then I go to the object of this bill. The object of the bill is to amend the Political Parties and Organizations Act to restrict government funding and other public resources provided to political parties and political organizations. My question to the Land Honorable Yusuf Mutembule is this the law that is envisaged in Article 71, 1C of the Constitution? Number one. If it's not, is this the law that is envisaged under Article 71, 2? The one that provides that Parliament will prescribe a code of conduct for political parties. In other words, apart from stating in the object what is the value addition of this particular piece of legislation, I don't seem to. I think I'm a little bit slow this morning, but I don't seem to decipher any value addition from this particular piece of legislation. And we come from different parts of the world. And lastly, Honorable Yusuf Mutembule, you know, Yusuf has been in legal practice for a relatively long period of time and is a teacher of the law. Do you really think the introduction of this particular piece of legislation does not create onerous obligations on political parties that are not envisaged by the Constitution?
You have 10 minutes to respond. You try.
Honorable Chair and members, thank you very much for the questions, comments, and all your concerns that have been raised. One, we should know that we are not creating a new law. The law already exists. And most of the questions that you're raising are already provided for under this Act. The only challenge is that we have not had time, maybe the members and others, to read the entire Act to understand. But what I want to point out is that to benefit, you must be a member of the National Consultative Forum. And where we are creating the two organs, the first organ that is going to be under IPOD for the parties that are already represented in Parliament, and then the other one for those that are not represented in Parliament. In fact, this amendment does not cause any constitutional crisis or it does not, in any way contravene any provision, particularly Article 29. Nobody is saying that you should not associate. We are saying associate. You have your different parties. But as long as you want to benefit from government funds, then you must adhere to the principles of 1, tolerance, 2, dialogue, 3, peaceful coexistence as parties, because that is the rationale behind the Political Parties and the Organizations Act. You understand? Nobody is forcing you.
Honorable Yusuf,
listen.
Where is that in the Constitution?
What we are listen.
No, Chair,
colleagues, Chair, please allow me submit.
Over the witness.
My colleagues,
we know we are colleagues, but when you appear here, you.
But you have to. It is through the chair. You are not.
No, we can cite you for contempt and even move that you be.
I think you need to be.
You should respect the committee. And we are the one going to accept and make a law. It's not you. So
Chair.
Yes.
Chair, I apologize if my voice is. To me, before you know that's my voice. Chair, what I'm saying is that for those who have ever listened to me, you know how my voice is. It's not the first time that he's doing that. But, colleagues, let us understand why we are here. someone has said he has, Honorable Sarah said he does not understand this particular aspect. And it's for that reason that we should carefully listen to the movers. One, we are saying that the parties are free to associate. Nobody is forcing anyone to make a merger or an alliance. We are only saying that when you look at this act, it has got principles that must be adhered to. You may have your different principles in your respective parties, but for purposes of you, because you see, getting funds for the parties is created for under section 14 of this act, and it's that section that we are saying, look, whereas you need to be given money as a party, there are some principles that we must adhere to. 1, tolerance. 2, dialogue. 3, peaceful coexistence as parties. Now, those principles are enshrined already in this act. We are not creating anything new. And now, once that is done, we are saying that we have IPOD, all the parties that are represented in Parliament, okay? It has just been an informal organization. We are formalizing it under the Act as part of the organ of National Consultative Forum. Now, if you don't want to be a part of, if you don't want to associate with the IPOD, colleagues, let's listen to this. If you don't want to associate with the IPOD, then you should have no business accessing the government funds.
No, what we are saying is,
no, but if you exist, if you exist. Chair, am I interacting with the members here, or it has to be through you?
Honourable members, let the mover respond. The rest is for us.
The rest is yours. You don't have the time.
We can't engage him. If he's not communicating, we are asking simple questions like, show us where you get these principles in the Constitution, which is our supreme law. Yes.
You look at the directive.
Let him point them out. Let him point them out.
In the Constitution.
The issue principles and directive, they will show you all those principles that we are pointing out. I may not have time now to read through them, but you just look at those principles. Chair, why don't you give me time to respond?
Chair, Mr. Chairman,
yes, Chair.
I have a prayer.
Because the only don't force us to understand. Just put your points across.
Okay, Chair, let me just.
And you don't direct us listen to. It's only the chair who can do that. So be a witness and respect the committee of parliament. This is not your day, it is us. We can decide and close. Will you speak to chairs? No. Me, I've ever appeared before a committee here. I'm very respectful, and I take guidance from members of the committee. So what kind of pressure are you under? What is really itching you that now you want to force things even on members of parliament? Let us not go beyond.
Chair.
Let me guide you. You need to understand. You have been here in this chair.
Chair,
you know how witnesses are treated.
Yes, Chair.
When you come to Parliament, you must
Chair.
Your witness, behave like a witness.
Chair, I apologize, Chair. Maybe I was thinking I was the other side. I apologize. I've since left. But with due respect to my colleagues, I request that I request that be. But even you heard someone was saying that Honorable Mutembuli, our colleague here, they have been saying that, and there is nothing that stops me from saying my colleagues. It is true, I'm a witness. Chair, allow me make this point, and then I'll allow my colleague to come in. One, we are saying that the National Consultative Forum is created for under Section 20 of the Act. And what we are only doing is that we want to expand the forum and create two organs. One that will be known as IPOD, and the second one that will cater for parties that are not represented in the Parliament. That is what we intend to do. The second aspect is under Section 14 of this Act, okay? Talks about funding of parties, okay? And now, what we are proposing is that for us to have dialogue, to have tolerance, to have peaceful coexistence as enshrined in this act, okay? We are saying that the moment you want to access government funds, okay, call them public funds, then you must be a member of the National Consultative Forum. If you don't want the funds, don't bother to be a member, because you're not going you want to get the money, but at the same time you don't want to be a member of the National Consultative Forum. So that is our point.
Let us now have, that one has been well canvassed.
Yeah,
no,
but
it's now for us to decide whether
no, point of clarification.
Something small, Mr. Chairman.
Point of clarification.
Which are not represented in Parliament, but they are members of IPOD, to also be given the money.
We are proposing an amendment to Section 14, and it's very clear. It only applies to parties in the Parliament, not those outside. Yes. No, the amendment. Listen, when you look at the object, we are creating a situation that, well, government is supposed to give funds, but we are saying there are some principles that must be adhered to, and we are saying there is a National Consultative Forum that requires any party that is interested to be part of it. And we are saying the moment you're part of it and you're in Parliament, then you automatically qualify to have that contribution from the government. But if you choose not to be party to National Consultative Forum, then you cease to have such benefits. That is the intention of this amendment.
Okay, now what we are going to do, before Honorable Afidwa comes in, you will be able to do further research and supply us with the written text to justify that position you are trying to push.
But chair on this as the answer, very quick.
Yes.
Planning to buy into that idea, and then we don't use the word IPOD, and we say let's provide for what you are saying, the principle, and call it summit or council or committee on something. We don't use IPOD. That's the first one.
I can answer that. Under IPOD, we have and the council.
You understand from me.
You need to understand this question.
For us, we know your concern. You want, within the National Consultative Forum, some platform, let's call it like that, for tolerance, peaceful coexistence and something. And you have suggested the name called IPOD. Now for us, we say, we agree with your principle, but we shall call it a summit, a committee, a council, a caucus or something like that.
So you don't want the name?
Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting first. I want them to answer, definitely. That's the first thing I want you to answer.
Your nature, Honorable Chair, I think Honorable Jonathan's challenge is IPOD. You can have anything else as long as it is not.
Would you be comfortable with anything else?
As long as it is not. As long as it brings out the principle.
Yeah, that's the first one. Then the
as
second
long as
one,
it brings out the principle.
Yeah, the second one is that you know IPOD was born out of some voluntary. So if I create one platform called the National Dialogue, and all these parties eventually say this is very good, they join, are we going to amend the law to also bring in the National Dialogue or the interreligious sub-platform for dialogue for political parties, call it whatever name? Are we going to be, supposing these same 7 political parties agree and join another platform which I have created or they have created and they are dialoguing, will we amend the law to also now bring it here?
The amendment of the law depends on very many circumstances. If at that time there is a mischief that requires to be cured, you will be at liberty to do that. But at the moment, we have pointed out the mischief. You have answered?
Fine. 2 minutes.
Yeah, Chair, thank you so much, and the committee for all the submissions and the clarifications and questions towards us to understand the bill much more further and come up with a better concrete written report. That I take it up. Second, I want to, in summary, say that the act we want to amend was established on the principles of the Constitution. And therefore, we do believe that the previous lawmakers never contravened the parent act. We've just come up with 3 amendments to our act. That said, the 2 critical issues is on the name, and I think we take that by good faith, much as we've agreed on the underlying principles. But allow me to say this. Government, over time, has taken up private initiatives. We do understand that IPOD was established by, with the support from the Dutch. And over time, based on our history, it has achieved, in our view, the intended outcome. And that's why we are seeing democratization happening in place. And for sustainability, if now we have proposed this to be taken up for sustainability, I want to believe and share with the committee that this is in good faith, that the already good works done by IPOD can now be sustainable, taken up by, under this act. We now regularize it so that it becomes an act which is inclusive enough. The last one is corporations are voluntary under NCF, under any means. And therefore, this act has not, the amendments, we've not really seen a word called coercion in our amendments. Our proposals are in the spirit of the Constitution, that to cooperate is voluntary. And we've seen cooperations between the major party in the House and within even the oppositions within. And those are the principles we want to continuously adhere to in these amendments. That said,
if cooperation is voluntary, non-cooperation should not attract any sanctions. The problem is you are introducing sanctions for non-cooperation. The sanctions you are introducing non-access to public funds.
now the last, now allow me finish on this. We are witnesses, but as Parliament, we are part of the, we are accountable to the population. Every penny that we spend on, every penny we appropriate on should be accounted. And I've not seen where accountability is not enshrined in our mandate. And if therefore conditioning comes with accountability and transparency, I've never seen where you're given money and it's free will.
They have been accounting to the Electoral Commission. They have been accounting to the Electoral Commission.
Chair.
The accountability is to the principle enshrined in the Act.
Chair, please.
I submit.
Chair. No, Chair, let me give him some information. It's intended objectives. That's why yesterday you saw a member, a party president of a political party, very furious because of that. Then too, and the IPOD is not an association whereby you benefit because of subscription. But then finally, I want to ask you, you clear my mind on this. There are parties which are under National Consultative Forum. If we decide to delete the word parties in Parliament and then we open that this funding should be given to all parties, would that be good for you? Because you are saying people who are associated, people who, yeah, transparency, everything, because all those parties, they have members outside, they have offices and everything. Back to you.
Chair, I want to believe that the founding fathers' idea of IPOD in 2001, FDC, CP, 2009, if they would listen to our conversations now, they might think that we have derailed away from there. This is my thinking. But now opening it up, because opening it up, our view is that they were legislating for their own benefits because they were in Parliament then. That's why they said IPOD only belongs to the parties in Parliament. But we are now saying, look, we had, allow me, Chair, give this example. We have many political parties that participated in the previous election. Not all of their members have representatives in Parliament, but some have in LUC 5, some have in LUC 3 in other political space. if the committee, in their own view, because you are the one, if in your own view you think we progress with this to open it up, it's upon us as the committee. But our proposal is for them to be represented and NCF, I submit.
Yes or no? Do you consult?
Chair, you have told us that we shall bring more information on this, as to whether we have consulted or not. But Chair, also to point out one thing,
yes,
that whether we have consulted them or not, this committee has got the powers to invite those parties and interact with them.
Okay.
And all those issues that we feel we have left out. But the Chair just wanted to conclude by saying that we are only causing 3 amendments. One under Section 14, which talks about the government contributing funds to the parties. And what we are saying is that if any party is to benefit from such funds...
That point is welcome.
Yes, I'm just giving a summary. Then
yes,
such a party shall...
Chair.
Much obliged, Chair. Chair, I stop at that.
The points are very clear. You are NCF.
Yes.
If parties which are represented in Parliament don't belong there, they will not get funding.
Yes.
Isn't that all?
Yes.
And the leadership of the NCF.
Yes. I think
Chair.
So thank you so much.
Chair.
You can write justification.
Chair.
Write a justification to convince us further. We have the executive director. We are giving him. You have a memo? How many pages?
No, before he comes in.
Okay, before he comes in.
I would rather we can exercise our brains on the first two, your original amendments. But this third one is actually just ridiculous. I don't think we should bother ourselves about having sometimes one briefcase company they are taking over leadership of political parties, sometimes that have gone through elections and they have representations. So your amendment, which you've done in the committee, I think that one just abandoned it. Because I don't want to exercise my brain to it at all. The other two, we can interrogate the advantages and the disadvantages. We can interrogate whether it promotes exactly what you are telling us or it doesn't. We can interrogate, and we will. Obviously, me, I'm not in the league where we shout at each other. I'm in a league where we listen to each other. So I think let's do the one thing. We've received your 2 amendments. You leave it to us. We shall investigate. The other one, just forget.
In view of what Honorable Katunta has said, I think we thank him and also withdraw the other proposed amendment, and we maintain the original bill as it is.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chairperson and the honorable members of the committee. My name is Dr. Lawrence Serwambaraka Bagabe. I am the Executive Director of the Interparty Organization for Dialogue, IPOD. I've been in the IPOD space since the 1st of November 2018. I am quite privy to the operations, the principles, and the workings of IPOD, and I will leverage that experience to inform my presentation. I thank you for this opportunity to come before you today. I'm not a representative of any political persuasion, but a messenger of a broader national interest, and that is the interest of dialogue, peace, and democratic maturity. Uganda as a country stands at a critical moment on its democratic path, a moment that calls us not just to imagine better politics, but to legislate for it. That's why I am here to make a case that IPOD, which is the Interparty Organization for Dialogue, should be institutionalized as a statutory body of the Republic of Uganda.
Procedure.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. You had guided before the ED started, you had guided that he makes a summary. I thought it would be a verbal one, but he seems to be reading the entire report, which to me brings some discomfort. And he has concluded very well.
The conclusion.
Much. Thank you. Okay. I will limit myself within the 5 minutes, if you please. Sure, sure. Sure. Honorable Santa. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Honorable Chairman, IPOD, for the time it's been operational, especially at the peak of its work, I should say from 2018 to date, we've had political parties represented in Parliament, some of which were very active, others I should say not very active. I'll give a case. The Forum for Democratic Change, while they were leaders of opposition, they chose to be active at a certain segment or on the critical path of dialogue. They would engage in all the other activities of IPOD, but opted not to be at the summit. The structure of IPOD is such that we have a summit, which is where the presidents of political parties sit, and then we have a council where the secretaries general, and then the other 3 senior members, plus the leader of opposition, the prime minister, sit. Unfortunately, while FDC did not participate at that level, they were fully engaged in all these processes. I wanted you, Honorable Chair, and the members, that the summits we have held in 2018 and 2019, the presidents of political parties unanimously agreed on the need to institutionalize IPOD into a statutory body. That process, however, for some reason, had not been actualized until when this discussion has come up. To that effect, yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Honorable Chair, I will supply them. Honorable Chair and members, Honorable Sant has been a member of IPOD, and as you need, or as you are aware, IPOD is, was legally registered in 2021, limited by guarantee, and the guarantors are the political parties. I wish to let you know that for me, if you ask me, in the limits of the function and the powers that came with IPOD, that institution has greatly achieved. You need to know that when we talk about dialogue, trust building, that's a process. It's quite protracted. It's not something that will come up, a day or two. I remember some leaders on the opposition asked us that, look, let NRM show us a gesture of goodwill that they are willing to talk and engage with us. And they said, even if it's meeting the president over a cup of tea, we have a few discussions, that will be a beginning point. Unfortunately, when we organized some of these engagements, a few members turned away. But the principle was that there was a need, and they felt they needed to engage with the ruling party. And we have done that. If you ask me some of the achievements that have been registered under IPOD, in 2021, you all remember, in the aftermath of the elections, we had some sort of polarization. We held a summit at Kololo. NUP had quite a number of its members who had been arrested. The leaders of political parties on the opposition talked to the president and said, look, the number of people that have been arrested, Your Excellency, through this platform, please prevail over this matter. And the president said 51 of those political prisoners would be released. And indeed, they were released. Today, we are talking about the 35 billion that is allocated to political parties in parliament. This is a discussion that generated from the summit of 2018 in IPOD. Discussed again in 2019, actualized today. We have had discussions around the political, around the POMA. I know Honorable Katuntu was very significant when he was Attorney General, Shadow Attorney General. Okay, sorry, the other Attorney General. Yes, they engaged in certain, processes on the guidelines of POMA, which the political parties cross-party have developed. They have been put to the table of the president because the president said he needed to consult the Army Council, the Security Council, for their input. So I should say that if IPOD were to, for instance, be more effective, it would be much, much more effective when it is institutionalized. We've also had political parties that have come to us and said, but look, IPOD, you have this convening power. Why wouldn't you help us with the political parties that are, for instance, abrogating the code of conduct of political parties? Prevail over them, have a discussion, and then see how things would work out. But because we lack that, the biting power, we've not been able to move an inch. Honorable members, I wish to tell you that there are so many, in my view, and of course leveraging and picking from lessons elsewhere, this space being institutionalized helps so very, very much. We've had capacity of political parties built. I can tell you that, for instance, during the last delegates conferences, we basically supported all political parties in their internal democratic processes, in things to do with consultations with the public on, policy issues, conflict resolution within and inter-party, and so many things. So I want to move by saying, Honorable Chair and members, that I think without delving into the other details which are to the preserve of the committee on the financial aspects, for me, I think it is imperative to institutionalize a space that encourages discussions amongst members. And I want to conclude by using with a quote from the late Nelson Mandela, who said that if you want to make peace with your enemy, you have to work with your enemy, then he becomes your partner. I submit.
I think we need to go through it, which is the truth, that some members of IPOD, some parties were active at certain points, and then others were not active. And he gave example of FBC. So that shows you what I was talking about. That because you have highlighted that the interest was dialogue, peace, and democratic maturity. Where there was dialogue, it was supposed to lead to peace and eventually democratic maturity. And why some parties were trying to pull out was because of lack of this. Where we were meeting and dialoguing, it was supposed to lead us into peace and eventually into democratic maturity. Are you trying to tell us by pushing away some of the political parties not to get funding from IPOD, you are trying to promote dialogue, peace, and democratic maturity? Because it arose from dissatisfaction from some other political parties of the challenges that they were facing. Much as we were dialoguing, sitting down, but there were challenges that were not being addressed by the IPOD League.
It's on the issue of institutionalization. So, and therefore he supports the position, their first issue. Somewhere you indicated that FDC, then as the leading opposition party in parliament, they were fairly performing. Would you help me relate the performance of the now leading opposition party in Parliament. Thank you. And then the other one was the sponsor of the bill, which wasn't answered by them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chair. I want to begin. I think we need to know that, for starters, it is not in the ambit of IPOD to determine the funding mechanisms and modalities of political parties. That's not in our ambit. And the institution that I represent is non-partisan. We have worked so hard, and we want to maintain IPOD as being a space that political parties call home. We do not want to bruise. We do not want, to... In other words, what I'm saying is that whether funding goes to political parties under whichever arrangement, that's for the committee to determine, and Parliament as a bigger body. So I will not get into Honorable Santa. I will not say whether IPOD supports that or not. What we are here to make a case for as IPOD is the institutionalization, which I think for us, when we benchmark from other countries where this platform started, this is a process. And I want to tell you, for instance, in the region here, I have on several occasions been invited to South Sudan. South Sudan would like to replicate the IPOD mechanism. South Sudan, Ethiopia, and Eritrea. The whole idea of, well, there is a starting point. At least it helps. In Sudan, for instance, they have SPLM and SPLM in opposition. But what I'm saying is that even in its limping stage, there are people that look at it as a good practice, even with its shortcomings, which I think we need to collectively work on healing. That's the thing.
Is this not the best way to institutionalize?
Honorable, I may not know other options, but I'm only saying that the case is for institutionalization. Finally, Honorable Nsanja asked me about FDC fairly performing. Then, like I have said, the Forum for Democratic Change participated in all processes of dialogue of IPOD except the summit. That is on record. Every time they would come to shape the agenda of summit, but the physical presence, they wouldn't be. If you ask me, if I juxtapose that with the current opposition, when NUP took on the leadership of opposition, the Memorandum of Understanding stipulates that they are supposed to counsel collectively, adopts a position, and invites them. Honorable Santa was in that council. Council wrote to NUP inviting them, first of all informing them of their eligibility and inviting them to join IPOD. The National Unity Platform, on record, declined and said that they still have lots of issues that remain unresolved, and therefore they were not willing to join us. On that note, I cannot say that, I cannot even compare them because there was no point of departure of engagement with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mopa, the private member. The question on who is the sponsor, this is the private members.
This is the private members bill. Thank you.
So thank you, Honorable Mutembuli, Honorable Fidra, and the Executive Director from written text on justification. I think the text from the Executive Director is comprehensive enough. In the case tomorrow, end of tomorrow. Just in case there is anything else we want from you, we will keep the minutes of the summit. Thank you so much, colleagues. I can't thank you enough. It has been so good. I know you have sacrificed a lot. You have budgets to follow for your constituencies, but thank you so much. We can now adjourn to Sindai again. Sindai for until further communication comes. Thank you so much.
The public should understand the exchange we had was not. Let's start with English so that the public gets to know for those who missed. Yusuf Mutembuli is my name. Member of Parliament, Bunyole East Butaleja, together with my colleague, Honorable
Afidra Ronald, Member of Parliament for Lower Madi Okolo District.
As you are aware, yesterday there was this particular bill that we are calling Political Parties and Organizations Amendment Bill 2025, which we came up for the first reading and was referred to the Committee of Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee. And today we're invited by the committee as movers and seconders of the bill to present our views, which we did. But for record purposes, we want to make it very clear, one, that we are intending to have amendments of 3 sections of the Act. The first one is Section 14 that deals with funding of political parties that have representation in Parliament. The second aspect is the one of the composition of the National Consultative Forum. And the last part is Section 21, where we are inserting a new provision giving the functions of IPOD. But for anyone to understand what is behind this act or the bill, one is that we have been having IPOD, which is a non-government organization, informal in nature, that brings all the parties that are interested, especially those that are represented in Parliament, together. And when you look at most of the issues, including how Section 14 came into existence, it was because of what was discussed in the summit of IPOD, where they proposed that parties must be funded or financed by the government. Okay? And what was the spirit was that we as parties, we must tolerate each other, we must be in a position to dialogue, we must have peaceful coexistence as parties. Those were the 3 major principles, which are also enshrined in the Constitution. Now, what happens today is that we want that IPOD, which is informal, to be totally in nature, to be part of Section 20 that creates the National Consultative Forum. Under that section, we want to create 2 organs. The first organ, which will be called IPOD. Then the second one will be that forum for parties that are not represented in the Parliament. Now, we are saying under Section 14, for you to access government funds, you must accept to participate in the activities of IPOD. And that is where the challenge is. Some of our colleagues are saying, please, when it comes to money that was proposed by IPOD and is being paid by Electoral Commission now, we have no problem with it. But when it comes to other activities of IPOD, we don't want to associate with IPOD. Now, we are saying for purposes of us having tolerance, for purposes of having dialogue and peaceful coexistence of parties in this country, we are saying IPOD is, first of all, we want to make it as an institution under the law, under Section 20. And then once it's an institution, there is free entry and free exit. We are saying you can be a member of IPOD as long as your party is represented in Parliament, or you can choose not to be. However, we are saying under Section 14, the only parties that are represented in the Parliament that should be eligible to get this money are parties that do subscribe or associate with IPOD. So you cannot say, I don't want business of IPOD, but when it comes to money, please give it to me. Okay? So we are saying, if you want to get government funds, then be part of IPOD. If you don't want to be part of it, nobody is going to refuse you from doing whatever you are saying. Issues were being raised whether this is unconstitutional contravening Article 29. No. Article 29 does not force anyone to cooperate or to associate with any. And we are saying that IPOD is free entry and free exit. We only saying that the moment you are not a member of, you don't subscribe and associate with IPOD, then there is no business as to why you should even get money that was as a result of the submissions and the recommendations, resolutions of IPOD. That is the only position we are saying. In simple terms, we are saying that we must tolerate each other, we must have dialogue, we must have peaceful coexistence as parties. That's the rationale behind all this. In summary, have IPOD as an institution. 2, if you want to have funds given by government, then you must associate and subscribe to the IPOD provided for under Section 20. Those are the only simple amendments that are created. Yes, what we have, and I think I was very, okay. I was very clear before the committee. We withdrew that aspect of that particular amendment. So we have remained with the original proposals in the original bill. And I've said 1, institutionalizing IPOD, and then 2, for you to access the funds of the government, you must subscribe to IPOD. If you don't, nobody is forcing you to be part of IPOD. But the only condition is that if you want to associate with us, then the condition is that you will get the benefits of being a member. And if you don't want, never say that I want to benefit when you're not a member. And that's why the challenge is. Tweyanziza nnyo member parliament wa Bunyole East, Ebutaleja, ne muganda wange Afidra Ronald.
Parliament Lower Madi.
Yes. Tuva kubeera mu committee ya Legal and Parliamentary Affairs okupresentinga bill yaffe egenda okuleeta ensonga nga 2. Ekisooka tugamba nti waliyo section 14 eri mu tteeka erifuga ebibiina egamba nti ebibiina byonna ebiri n'abamembers wa parliament mu parliament bijja kuweewanga ssente. Okay? Ekyokubiri tugamba nti waliyo organization bagiyita IPOD egaata bibiina byonna ebyagala. Era in this case I want to be very clear nti NUP yo yagaana nti teyagala kubeera part of IPOD, ne parties ezisinga obungi zonna mweziri ne NUP yo yagamba teyagala. Kakati section 14 yaleetewa etya nti abakulu b'ebibiina by'omu Uganda ebyaliwo that time byatuula ne bigamba nti parties embeera ze zirimu zeetaagibwa okuweebwa ssente, era ne bakola ki? Ne bakola resolutions. Okuva mu resolutions ezo ne bajja ne bakola etteeka, okay, ne bateekamu ka amendment ako ne bagamba nti parties babeere nga bakola ki? Bazifundinga. Now obuzibu bwe tulina nti tulina parties endala zo esente ezaleetewa ne proposal ya IPOD nga kati ziri muteeka under section 14 eryeteeka erifuga ebibiina, okay, bazaagala era bazitwala. Newe kijja ogamba nti tugende mu activities eza IPOD eyavaako omulamu oguleeta ssente zino bagamba tetwagala. Kati awe tuligambira nti nedda IPOD ebadde just organization ya waweeru, twagala gireeta mu mateeka ebeere nga kintu kyaffe, kireme kubeera nti abazungu be bakiteekamu ssente. Ffe bannayuganda bennyini nga tulina awantu we tutuula ne tubeera ne dialogue, awantu we tutuula ne tubeera we tubanga tulina ebizibu byaffe nga parties, nga tulina organ esobola otutuuza ffe bennyini nga bannayuganda. So eyo ensonga enkulu twagala kuleeta IPOD tugiteeke mu muteeka ebeere nti kati kintu kya Uganda, si kibiina nti omuntu wa Netherlands bayinza okusalawo ne bagamba nti leero tugenda kusponsoringa ne kifwa. So kati twagala kibeere mu mateeka nga ne ssente ziva mu government eziba nti zikola ki? Zikirunninga, so that buli party yonna eyagala emirembe mu Uganda, by dialogue is about mirembe. A party yonna eyagala emirembe ne stability in this country subscribing ngebeera member wa IPOD. So kye tuligamba nti obeera member wa IPOD benefits zona including ne million by the billions za 35 zishewaringwa ne parties zona uli mwaka naye nga byatandikirwa mu IPOD. So tuligamba nti wobanga oyagala ku ssente ezo then kkiriza tugende mu principles za tolerance, dialogue and peaceful coexistence bye tuli kwogerako. So obeere member wa IPOD. Tewali muntu ali kuforcinga party yonna okubeera member wa IPOD. Woba oyagala beera, woba toyagala lekayo. Ne tugamba gwe okufuna ssente za government tuli kuteekawo egunde IPOD eno olina kubeera member waayo. So in any case tetuli kuforcinga muntu yena nti beera member wa IPOD. So gwe obanga obulira nti oyagala sente eziva mu government, okay, ezaleetebwa as a discussion eya summit ya IPOD, then tugamba kiriza o subscribing o associating ne IPOD, then benefits zonna ogenda azifuna. Wosalawo n'ogamba nze bikwatagana na IPOD sibyagala, ekitegeeza n'esente za government nazo gamba sikola ki sizaagala. Awe wali obuzibu, abanaffe baagala bafune sente ezaava muli eri n'ekintu ekyo ekyaleeta sente tebaagala kubeerako nga babeera nakyo. So awe tuli kwogerera. Njagala bannayuganda bakitegeere nti IPOD eri free, abaagala okugiyingira pate yonna eyagala ng'eri mu palamenti muno ebeere free, eteyagala erekeyo. But the only condition is tugamba nti oyo atayagala kubeera mu IPOD tasaana kuweewa ki sente. That's the only proposal gye tuli kuleeta. Obukulembeze tugezezzaako ne tutuusa awantu nga tuinteractizera ma members ne tukitegeera kyebadde bagamba ne bagamba nti tukireke obukulembeze bubeere nga wa parties eziri mu palamenti zooka, tetuyingiza mu party endala kuba abantu bajja creatinga parties nyingi nnyo nga nabo baagala ki bukulembeze. So ne tu understanding and tu abandoning, so to continue an original bill yaffe nga weeri. Omubaka yena yogera nti si kyaffe abatamanyi mateeka ne constitution abatagimanyi, kuba constitution etugamba ffe nga members wa parliament tulina betu okuleeta kye bayita private members bill, era kye tukoze nga tuli mu buyinza waffe we tulina mu constitution era tuleese. So omuntu wagamba nti sifo tu sponsoringa bakubulidde yani ffe ba sponsors benyine be bill yaffe. So we are just only exercising our mandate under the constitution. Article 71, I mean, is very clear. I mean, 79, not 71, 79. We have to make laws as parliament, okay? And then there is a provision in the constitution that gives us powers of later private members bill. Neche nyanga kuli Uganda eteka tulirese mu mutima mulungi nga kye twagala abantu beere n'emirembe. Ku nsi kuno anatayagala kutuula ne munne ku menza. Kujjako ng'omuntu tayagala kuleeta mirembe mu Uganda. Tuligamba tubeere n'ekitongole ekituteeka wamu ffenna nga twogera ensonga, ate ng'ekitongole kino kye kyatuleeta ne ssente ffe aba NUP, aba NRM, aba FDC zituli kufuna ssaawa zino zaava mu kintu ekyo. Naye tetwagala kintu ekyo, naye babeerawo akasimbi tugamba mukatuwe naye ekyo tetukyagala. Temulaba nga waliwo double standards?
From me, I have two issues. One, why now? And secondly, is there any political party which is intolerant, which forced you to bring this bill?
One, why now? There is no period that is prescribed for as and when we should have such an amendment. It's open. As long as you are a member of parliament, as long as there is need for an amendment of this nature, we can do it. It's not one of those entrenched that you must bring in such and such a period. So anytime you feel, you can bring it. So according to us, time is now.
Is there any political party which is intolerant?
Yes, you listen to the Chief Executive Office of IPOD. He was very clear. He said National Unity Platform does not want to associate and subscribe itself to or with IPOD. Okay? And for us, we are not even targeting it. Tomorrow, NRM may also refuse. FDC may refuse. But what we are saying is that we need to tolerate each other. We need to have dialogue. And that's why this IPOD is there. If you can remember, there was a time when we had issues, human rights issues, and was a resolution by the summit of the IPOD, and some of the political prisoners were released as a result of that discussion, as a result of that dialogue. So it's not in vain. It's not in vain.
Just allow me to compliment one.